Welcome back to the BESS Deal Lab. In the previous modeling lessons, we have built 6 different revenue structures. Depending on which case you select in the dropdown, this dashboard brings that particular revenue mix to life for decision makers. From the high-level IRR and cash-on-cash yield, down to the yearly cash flow waterfall and revenue breakdown. In this lesson, our goal is to take all of those detailed revenue mechanics and consolidate them into one clean summary that feeds straight into the financial statements. If you're new to this Deal Lab series, I recommend starting with part 1, where you can download the model start file for free and build the model alongside me. Link is in the video description below. Let's jump into the integrated financial statements. In this lesson, we will build that aggregation so every revenue stream we have modeled starts flowing into the financial statements in a transparent and lender-friendly way. In your checkpoint file from the previous lesson, the integrated financial statements are already linked to the operations sheet, but at the moment everything is still 0. The reason is simple: our revenue summary on the operations sheet hasn't been built yet. And over the next few lessons, as we add the revenue summary, OPEX, and then financing, these statements will start to populate and you will see the full project story emerge. And now let's jump over to the operations sheet. We will start here in the total revenue block. Line by line, we are just pulling in the yearly totals from each detailed revenue section above and summing them into a single total revenue line for the project. In column G, you see a small sensitivity flex input. This lets us sensitize each revenue stream up or down by percentage without touching the underlying case assumptions. Very handy later on when we run downside cases or lender sensitivities. Alright, let's get going with actually linking in our revenue sources. So we will start with our capacity tolling agreement. And this is going to be equal to, let's scroll up to our relevant section. And that is right here. In row 135, we have our CTA revenue. Let's link it to K135. Hit enter. And to allow maximum flexibility, what we will do is multiply this with open parentheses 1 plus our sensitivity flex. And right here we have to anchor to our column. So hit F4 1, 2, 3 times. Close parentheses, hit enter. And so that we don't have to do this modeling step now 6 times in a row, we just copy this formula, Control C, and let's hit Alt HVS F to only paste formulas so we don't mess up the formatting down here. And now the only thing we will have to do is adjust our first reference in the formula. So let's scroll up. And right now we're looking at resource adequacy. So let's find that section. And this is going to be right here, the RA revenue in 155. Hit enter. Then let's do the auxiliary services contract. Hit F2, scroll up. And let's drag this reference down to our ASC revenue. Hit enter. All of these revenues, by the way, are still 0 because we are still in case 15, which is our fully merchant case. Then let's do our merchant energy arbitrage, which is in row 195. So let's just type 195 instead of 138. So the reference here is right. Our merchant energy arbitrage profit. Hit enter. Then let's do our merchant auxiliary services, hit F2, and that is going to be in row 239. So let's just type 239 instead of 139, hit enter. And then let's do our revenue put option, which is right here in 251, and that is essentially just our RPO payout or our annual top up. So let's type 251, hit enter. And then here in 260, we take the sum of this. Hit Shift Alt equals to take the sum. And let's drag all of this over. Control R. And you can see that over a 20-year asset life, we expect a total revenue of 336.9 million, of which 100 million are coming from merchant energy arbitrage, 225.5 million come from merchant auxiliary services, and 10.6 million come from our RPO payout. Now you might wonder, why do we have merchant auxiliary services of only 225 million, although in 239 it's 281.8 million. And the reason being is our sensitivity flex right here. In our summary sheet for the merchant energy arbitrage and merchant auxiliary services, we essentially only take 80% of the assumed revenue. And if you jump to the inputs time independent sheet, the reason being for that is that down here in row 311 and 310, we have a sensitivity for case 15, which is currently on, where we haircut 20% of merchant energy arbitrage and merchant auxiliary services, because right here we are in our debt base case or debt sizing case. And you can see that for the same case of the same commercial setup, but from an equity perspective, we will not assume any merchant haircut anymore. So in this case, we will do our debt sizing, then apply that debt size to case 16. But from an equity standpoint, we do not haircut our merchant revenues. Let's flip over back to the operations sheet and let's get going. And the next thing we will do is model row 262. And what we will do here is translate our total revenue into an average power unit revenue in US dollars per kilowatt AC per month. This essentially just gives us a normalized metric that makes it much easier to compare different projects or commercial structures. And to do this, let's hop into K262. And this starts with an if error because we might divide by 0, so we don't want an error in the model. And we take our total revenue and we will divide this by, let's scroll up. Let's look at our gross power capacity block. And we for sure want the unit to be in kilowatt AC. And we could actually pull in 3 different values, one for gross AC power, one for the availability adjustment, and one for the curtailment adjustment. But since we don't commercially want to overcomplicate things, I suggest that we use the curtailment adjusted value. So let's pick up row 55. Hit F4 2 times, just in case, comma 0. Just because in the first period we will divide by 0, so we want to avoid an error. And that means we have divided our total revenue by our kilowatt AC installed capacity. However, there still need to be a couple of adjustments. The first one is to divide by months per year, because we want kilowatt AC per month. And then we'll also have to multiply by 1000, because if you scroll back down, you can see that our total revenue is in thousands USD, and this output is supposed to be in US dollars per kilowatt AC per month. So divide by months per year and multiply by 1000. Hit enter and let's drag this over, Control R. And this line here is actually super helpful if investors or lenders want to compare how well a merchant structure pays in comparison to, say, a fixed tolling agreement with a fixed price in USD per kilowatt AC month. Okay, and the last step in this sheet is to split revenue into contracted versus merchant revenues. This is absolutely essential for debt modeling because lenders typically size and test DSCRs separately for contracted cash flows and for merchant cash flows. So here we allocate each revenue stream accordingly. Contracted products like the capacity tolling agreement, resource adequacy, and long-term service contracts go into the contracted bucket, while purely merchant products sit in the merchant bucket. Okay, and for the first 3 right here, we just do a simple linkage. So this is the CTA, resource adequacy, and auxiliary services. Hit Control D and let's drag this one over, Control R. And now for the revenue put option, let's really watch out here. So what lenders will do is not look at the actual payout, but instead a lender will treat the minimum revenue as a contracted revenue stream. So instead of picking up and linking it to our revenue put option payout, what we do instead is link it to our RPO minimum revenue. Link it up here, hit Control R, and we're actually missing a sum total here, so hit Control D in cell J267. And that allows us to model our contracted revenue, which is gonna be the minimum. Let's just in case take the minimum of our total revenue in 260, comma, and the sum of these four above. Close two parentheses, hit enter, and let's drag this one over, Control R. And then this allows us to model our merchant revenue, which is a simple back solve. So all we do is take our total revenue and subtract our contracted revenue. And that will leave us with our merchant revenue. Hit Control R. And to make sure that we're not accidentally modeling anything wrong here in the split, we will also implement a simple check, which is going to be an if statement. And if our total revenue in row 260 equals the sum of our contracted and merchant revenue in 269 and 270, let's close parentheses, then we want a 0, so no flag is turned on, otherwise a 1, close parentheses, hit enter, let's drag this one over, Control R. You see we do not get any fail, but let's just for whatever reason delete this reference right here. And you can see then our total revenue check would turn on, which is a handy way of checking whether we have any mistake in the contracted versus uncontracted revenue split. So hit Control R to make sure that we're not having any break here. And as you can see, the revenue put option effectively gives us a contracted revenue floor on top of the merchant stack, which is the reason why lenders like a fully merchant structure that's covered by an RPO. They can treat the floor as a contracted cash flow while equity still keeps the potential merchant upside. And with that summary in place, we should already start seeing the first numbers in our integrated financial statements populate. And look at that, our balance sheet, income statement, and our cash flow statement start to populate quite some numbers here. And you can see that over the previous lessons, we have built the top line, our revenue. We can also switch cases here. So let's say if you switch to case 1, you will see that our capacity tolling agreement revenue turns on and all other revenues turn off. Same goes for other cases like case 5, where we have a resource adequacy and merchant energy arbitrage split. And then if you scroll further down, you can see that all of this cash is flowing straight into our cash account, where it just builds up. And this same core logic is reflected in our income statement, where we now already have our total revenue and a bunch of retained earnings because we're not distributing anything. And same goes for the balance sheet, where on the asset side, we have a bunch of cash, and on the liability and equity side, we have retained earnings matching that amount. So these three statements are already fully integrated. And if you would like to learn how to link them yourself, you could check out one of our other courses where we explain that in more detail. Alright guys, in the next lesson, we'll move down the operating cash flow waterfall and start modeling operating expenditures, the full OPEX stack that sits underneath the revenues we have just modeled in the previous lessons. Alright guys, I will see you there.